All right, Kipper, let's get to the big story. Obviously, the deadline a week away. Why don't we sift through some of the news and notes? So we'll start with the Pacioretty news. You shocked he's on IR here?
No, not at all. I think when we look back at the invitation, the PTO, he had already had a history of breaking down, and here we are now going towards the trade deadline, and they're doing everything they can to open up as much cap space as possible, and we'll see how this plays out. I give him full credit for whatever he's been able to give the Leafs up until this point has been more than what I had thought. His ability to play physical has been a little less than remarkable for me. So I think he's given everything he has up until this point, and we'll see if there's going to be an availability come playoff time, but not overly surprised to see where he is right now. He's never been that physical of a player throughout his career, so the ask was big this year for him. Unfortunately, the body's broken down somewhat.
Kipper, what do you think about the way the Leafs handle releasing news on injuries? They seem to go about it in a different way. I mean, a couple of days ago, they literally said Pacioretty is going to probably most likely be ready to play on Friday. And then on Friday, he's on IR. Do you notice them handling it different? Do you find it annoying? That just business as usual in that league.
I know a lot of people in the media find it annoying, but Rosie, I'll tell you, if I was running a team, if I was running the Toronto Maple Leafs, I would be no different. And you played it, you know what it's like. We never shared information. We never liked hearing that the other team knew where my injury was. Could it be targeted? Could it be? I mean, that's just old school me. But unless the league tells me otherwise, like the National Football League tells their players association and their respective teams that you must declare, I'd be the same way.
Nick Robertson wants to stay. I guess he officially rescinds his trade request, and sort of the quote with Luke Fox there, your coworker. How much do you read into that, and what are the chances Robertson stays a Leaf past the deadline, in your opinion?
Well, my experience throughout my career is whether you wanted to stay or go, that I'm not sure it made a heck of a big difference to a club that is thinking big picture. And I've got a lot of respect for Nick and what he's been able to do and hang in there, and the recent streak that he's on. It's all good. He's doing his part. Let's put it that way. But at the end of the day, I'm not sure where they stand in terms of legitimately looking at Nick Robertson saying he's a top 9 guy for us to make a playoff push. So we'll see how that plays out. I think at times they've tried to move him this year with no real interest. We'll see if his last few weeks have made a difference going into Friday for clubs to maybe consider him, maybe even contending teams considering him. But right now, I think he's done his part. Now it's up to the Leafs to decide which direction they go with Nick Robertson.
Kipper, you've been reporting on Mikko Rantanen a little bit lately, and obviously the Canes have got themselves in a potential jam if they can't re-sign this guy. I mean, it's pretty big news. If that doesn't happen and there's, a deal to be made, do you think the Maple Leafs are going to be in on that? What does that mean? What does that mean for their cap, for Mitch Marner? It's quite the story. If you think they're in on that?
It is. And yes, absolutely. I think the Leafs are a number of teams that are in on it. And the big thing is that you don't need a ton of cap space to fit him in. I think the number is less than $300,000 of cap space that you need available should you be able to trade him. So that's music to the Leafs' ears and many other contending teams, that it's not just about trying to find out what it would take to consummate the deal with Carolina, i.e. draft picks or rostered players or prospects. But sometimes this time of year, it's about fitting in still a salary cap. That's not the case with the Leafs. So I think absolutely they would be in it. The question is, by next Friday, where is Rantanen? Is he considering signing a deal? Is it no matter how much money you offer me, I'm not re-signing here? And then Carolina has to make a very hard decision. Earlier on, I think Tom Dundon wasn't scared to let people know that if he doesn't sign, he's going to flip him. Now there's a few different reports out there. Frank Saravelli from Daily Faceoff mentioned that maybe they keep him regardless. A lot of poker going on right now.
Yeah, sounds like it.
And yeah, and from the Leafs perspective, like I love it. Mikko Rantanen's the top player on the planet, in my opinion. But it's like more what they would have to give up, because you're Carolina. Yeah, you want to maybe trade the guy because you got to recoup some assets. You're still trying to win a Stanley Cup. So from the Maple Leafs perspective, just spitballing, who's that including? Is it a Nyes? Is it a
Yeah.
McMahon? Somebody like that?
It's a rostered player. There's
Yeah.
no question that they're going to want a roster player and a potential guy that can fit into a top six. Now, does Bobby McMahon put himself in that position? Does Carolina see a lot of upside with Bobby McMahon, or do they go higher and ask for Matthew Nyes? And that's really the predicament here if you're the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, I would consider almost Matthew Nyes as an untouchable, but seeing where the Leafs are right now, and this is where the Marner conversation comes up. You got to have a really good indication if this guy still has the potential to resign, or if he's as good as gone. If they believe that he is not going to resign, then having Rantanen as an insurance policy to come in and be that first guy that you're going to target in the offseason to replace Marner, I think is the way to go. And the other thing it can do, it can alleviate the pressure of thinking that you need to keep Matthew Nyes. Rantanen's 27 years old. If you're going to move on Nyes, then it sure is easier pill to swallow, knowing that you're going to have Rantanen for the next 7 years, running shotgun with Austin Matthews instead of Matthew Nyes. So this is where the Leafs hopefully have done their homework, and they can really understand the dynamics of the next, not only week, but the next few months.
What about further down the depth chart? Center position with some depth is kind of what's been talked about, as well as a right-handed defenseman. I think that's going to be only more apparent as Tanev misses some time, how much they need to shore that up. Where do you think their focus is going to be, and how likely do you think it is that they're going to make a bit of a splash? And some people think they won't be able to get a whole lot done.
Well, the splash forever has been a center ice position, and Schenn out of St. Louis has been heavily talked about. The problem is he's 7 years older than a guy like Rantanen, so you got to be in a position where you're not so worried about what Schenn will look like in 2 or 3 years, except for what he can bring you this year, and then you just move forward. Schenn's more realistic if you're going to give up a Cowan or Minton, right? So if you want to give up one of those guys, maybe plus, then you can go and get Schenn. And then, of course, that also alleviates the feeling that you got to bring back Tavares next year at a $6 or $7 million contract, because Schenn at 6.5 and potentially Tavares at the same number doesn't make much sense for me moving forward.
Yeah. A lot of moving parts, but if you were to, put your GM hat and think real hard, do you think they get one of Lawton, Schenn, or a Rantanen, like a bigger piece, or are you going to be left disappointed if it's like, say, like a Jake Evans or something like that?
Yes, for me, absolutely. Major disappointment. Again, if you look at Brendan Shanahan over the last 10 years, he's, through the work of Kyle Dubas, he's swung for the fences a couple of times this time of year, and unfortunately have missed. Foligno and Ryan O'Reilly are the two big ones, but he's going to get another crack at this, and this one could be the last one if he doesn't get out of the first round. There's just no way that you can't go fairly big in the next week here. This is go big or go home time for a lot of people in the organization, including the management, who feel like this is the year they got to go deep. And I think it's an excellent opportunity. We're still seeing a fickle Atlantic division between Florida and Tampa Bay. Some nights they look like world beaters. Other nights they look very beatable. When you got the goaltending that the Leafs are getting, this is the year that you got to go all in.
Seems like it. What down in the depth chart, obviously, but Ryan Reeves, do you think there's a spot on this roster? Do they think they that the Leafs have him in their plans moving forward?
I don't see with the salary cap situation and the work of who's on IR and who's not long term. I think Reeves is going to be on the outside looking in right now, and if there's once that the salary cap doesn't matter and you're past to a certain date and you can keep him around, there's always the chance he could find himself back in. But right now, it doesn't look like he's in the immediate plans.
Kipper, I'm curious to get your opinion on Calle Jarnkrok, who it seems like imminent he's going to make his return in his season debut. There's a lot of people that have not feeling great about Jarnkrok because of the Stanley Cup playoffs he had last year, 0 points in 7 games. Just my speculation. I don't think he was fully, completely healthy in that one. But do you like Jarnkrok as a player? Do you think he could be a good fit for this team down the stretch here?
Yeah. Nick, I'm not really counting on him on any major contributions, but we do know this time of year, and especially in the playoffs when injuries go down, the depth is so important. So if you ask me, and he's kind of grown on me the last little while, I don't mind him being around and being in a position where he can step in, and then on some nights he may have to play in your top 6, and there's other nights he can kill penalties or he can play a fourth line, third line. So I'm okay having him around. The only question is how quickly can he look like a guy that can fit in being off all season? And that's another question mark. But depth is very, very important this time of year. So I'm okay, again, for a guy that's hanging around. But do I feel like I got to go to war with this guy and I got to have him in there? He's not that guy for me just yet.
Personally, I think he's another guy who could be in play. Just to wrap, as we look forward to next Friday, who are some pieces that you think could make sense to leave this roster, and what would you set the over/under on in terms of moves for this team?
Over/under is +2 trades, two and over. So and I think there's some depth still to be picked up on the blue line, and would they, in a perfect world, like to replace Timmins with Luke Schenn? Yes, absolutely. But again, Luke's built up some stock over the last few years. He's not going to be cheap. You want to put those brothers together here? They're not going to be cheap. And again, you got to make that decision on what you want to move out. And they don't have their first round pick this year. I'm not sure it scares teams. I think they can float next year's out. You're talking about a bottom third of the first round. There's always a big drop off there. I think teams would be happy to take the Leafs first round next year, opposed to having to have one this year. So I expect Minton or Cowan to be gone pretty much this time next week.
Yeah.
Do you expect is the Rantanen thing like holding the entire market up right now, Kipper, in your opinion? Just because a player of this ilk, like it's hilarious. A month ago, we're talking about this trade coming out of nowhere, and there's the potential he could be available again. And if I'm a contender, I'm like, holy crap, this guy's available. Yeah, I'm interested.
Yeah, I would say under normal circumstances, Nick, that could be the case. But again, this is such a strange dynamic with Rantanen. And now that it's in play that he could stay regardless of not signing, then all of a sudden you don't want to be the Toronto Maple Leafs caught with your pants down waiting for something that doesn't happen. So you can't take that chance. You got to start moving and making some hard decisions as early as this weekend on which direction you want to go. But if many teams are waiting for Rantanen, they're making a mistake here. Because they're going to be potentially left without a chair when push comes to shove.
Kipper, it's been great catching up. Thank you so much for making time today. Enjoy the deadline, okay?
Okay, you guys have a great one, okay? You enjoy it as well.
Make sure to check out more of our content right here on the Leafs Nation YouTube page. We got long-form interviews, we got clips, we got epic rants by Jay Rosehill. We simply have it all. And don't forget, you can find out much more at theleafsnation.com. Thanks so much for watching.